Hello everyone, my name is Gustavo Lilles and welcome to a geocentric analysis of what is happening in France. So, political instability in France is nothing new, but things are getting out of control now. So, 4 prime ministers in 1 year is crazy, especially those two cases here. That François Bayrou was in power after the elections, the snap elections of 2024, and he didn't have confidence, and Sébastien Lecornu was named by Macron and he left the government and Macron announced him back. So things are not really well in France. But there are some reasons for this chaos that became French politics and they are not new. So let's find out. See, that's Charles de Gaulle, one of the most important politicians in the 20th century, if not in the history. He was the main general against Nazi forces and against the Friends of Vichy, and after the political crisis established in the creation of the Fourth Republic, which was the republic after the Second World War, de Gaulle and de Brioux wrote another constitution to fix these problems from the previous one. So here's the constitution of the Fifth Republic, the new constitution, new in quotes, constitution of France. And there are some things we need to pay attention here. So we're talking about a semi-presidential constitution, neither a parliamentary one or a presidential one. But to have good relations between the executive and the legislative, the president chooses the prime minister instead of a direct or indirect vote. But the president has too much power in his hands sometimes. For example, he can call snap elections for the National Assembly. So if he thinks that the assembly isn't working well, he just call elections and French people need to vote again. This is in the constitution of other countries like in the UK for example, but there are no strong rules or bureaucracy in the French snap elections system compared to the other constitutions. And the last one we need to pay attention and the most problematic one is the Article 49, especially the third paragraph. This article permits the Prime Minister to approve any law without an assembly vote. If the assembly wants to reject and not pass this modal decision, they can in 24 hours call a no confidence vote. And if that's approved by the majority, the Prime Minister and his government falls. But this is really radical and has been proved to be a retardation for good relations between parliament and executive. This was the solution for problems in the 20th century, but nowadays it seems that the constitution has become outdated and problematic. And Macron's government is the synthesis of a bad administration and this confusing constitution. Macron's administration is one to be discussed in decades because he was in this century the most important president in the French Republic. And I'm not saying the best, okay? He became famous after being the Minister of Economy in France in François Hollande's government. Hollande finished his government in a popular way and Macron used this wave to be the candidate. In Hollande's government, he created labor and business laws known as Macron laws, liberalizing the economy and helping business in France, especially businessmen. He created his own policy called En Marche, now Renaissance, a centrist policy that would be the major force against the radical left and the right extremists in France. And this was a good strategy in his first mandate because he won the 2017 major elections with a good advantage against Marine Le Pen and started his government with huge reforms, especially economic ones. As for you who don't know, he was a banker before being a politician, so representing his past, his reforms were not popular and extremely liberal, like the labor reform which was passed through the controversial Article 49.3. Macron never had a really popular government in France, but his weapon to win the elections was always the right-wing extremists, that he was the only force that could win against the Le Pen family. And this works again in 2022 elections, but this time the result was tight compared to the 2017 big win of Macron. The second government of Macron was not good. It was not popular and his legacy is now being questioned. Yes, he could control the inflation post-pandemic and the French economy had a good small growth, but his reforms and taxes were seen as terrible for the French people. In 2022, for example, the Prime Minister at the time, Elisabeth Borne, used 23 times the Article 49.3 just because Macron policies were not popular. Diesel taxes, reform on the pension laws that are almost sacred to French people, and his own concern on the Ukrainian war. Migration laws that weren't popular neither on both left and right sides. Crime rates high in big cities like Paris and Marseille were flaws that in consequence brought more power to the ultra-right. The Le Pen family went from a racist and anti-Semitic family that was just kind of popular in crisis to be seen as the solution to the political and social stability. But the right-wing parties are getting popular all around the world, especially in the Western world. France has seen a growth of ethnic and racial nationalism because of massive migration, especially to big cities. And this was seen mainly through the eyes of the ultra-right-wing movements as the big problem of France. The elections of the European Union Parliament show the power of the ultra-right-wing movement in France. They became the majority, winning against huge alliances, including the big alliance of the president's party Renaissance. This was an alarm for Macron, that in a strange decision called snap elections to resolve the situation. But this was terrible for him. If a party that is threat to your government is growing, how in the world we will call elections in the middle of the growth of this party and ideology? This was the decision of Macron. The Rassemblement policy, or you can say the Le Pen's policy, almost won the big majority of the elections in the first round. But the Ensemble coalition of the president with the left coalition made the decision to form the Republican Front Alliance, known as the Cordon Sanitaire, that historically won the elections against the ultra-right wing. And that time was no different. Actually, the left got the majority and the centrists got more seats than the RN. But after the elections, Macron nominated François Bayrou as the prime minister. And this was a huge problem, because the alliance that the left-wing parties had with Macron's parties was seen as a real alliance and not just for the elections. Because Mélenchon, the leader of the left wing, thought that because of the help that he gave to Macron, he would be the prime minister, or some left-wing MP would be the leader of the parliament and the prime minister. But this wasn't the case. And because of this move, Macron lost the trust of the left wing, and without the left wing and the right wing, Macron and the centrists are now lost and alone. But the 2027 elections promises to be one to remember. France centrists, as I said, with right-wing parties like the Republicans and left-wing, are now losing power and popularity to the Rassemblement again. And the leader is not anyone from the Le Pen family now. The 30 years old Jourdain Bardella is a young, charismatic and ambitious leader that is getting more popularity than ever. The national sentiment in France is growing and no other party fits well better than the RN. After Marine Le Pen was arrested because of corruption, everyone thought that this would destabilize the party. But this was the perfect moment to get away from the anti-Semitic racist past from the Jean-Marie Le Pen and his daughter. Now the ultra-right-wing party has this new face that is young, popular and has gained popularity even with people that were considered centrists or Republicans. If nothing is done by the big political parties in France, there are huge chances for the first time the ultra-right-wing movement and the ultra-right-wing party represent the French presidency with a big majority. That was it. Thank you for watching this video and please share to your friends to help me creating this type of content. Thank you.